I killed them. I killed them all. They're dead. Every single one of them.
See, nobody cares.
I rate Jurassic World Rebirth 6 out of 10 overall, because while not a good film, I had a good time. Emotionally, when it comes to dinosaurs, I am a toddler, and when you metaphorically jingle keys in my face, I'll be entertained. But this video is not about that rating. This video is about why I'd rate the writing specifically only 3 out of 10. This video is about the 7 mistakes of Jurassic World Rebirth. And I'm making this not because I like hating on the film, but because if there's gonna be a sequel, I want it to be better. I want it to learn from these mistakes. After Jurassic World Dominion, many people were understandably skeptical when a new sequel was announced. But I was excited for Jurassic World Rebirth because I felt Dominion left the franchise in a place that I've wanted to see properly explored since the oddly tacked on San Diego sequence of The Lost World in 1997. While we got to the point of dinosaurs in our world in a clunky way, I was happy we finally got there. And yeah. Then Universal went ahead and hired a writer who has gone on the record to say that he had no idea what to do with that concept of dinosaurs in the modern world. Not a clue. Not a single inkling. How is that even possible? There are endless story possibilities there, and he had no idea? When it was first announced that David Koepp, the screenplay writer of the original Jurassic Park and The Lost World, was penning the script for Jurassic World Rebirth, it gave me so much hope. It was my main reason to be optimistic. But instead, the writing of the film is the weakest link. For many reasons, which I'll get into in this video, but at its core, it's because David Koepp was the wrong man for the job. Universal hired a writer who had no idea what to do with dinosaurs in our world to write the sequel to their movies that set up dinosaurs in our world. When he got back to them and said, "Hey, I have no idea what to do with this. The only thing I can think of is to undo what you've spent 2 movies to achieve." Universal should have hit him back with, "Okay, thanks, but no thanks." Instead, they said, "Sounds good, you're hired." And then they made another hiring mistake. Gareth Edwards. Yep, I'm going there. Gareth Edwards was the wrong director. Gareth Edwards is a great director. He's directed the hell out of some films. The imposing skill of Godzilla? Impeccable. Every single thing about the Darth Vader hallway scene from Rogue One? Thrilling. When it was announced that he would direct Jurassic World Rebirth, I went, aha! There is my second reason to be optimistic. And there are scenes in Jurassic World Rebirth where I felt he really shined as a director. The Mosasaurus scenes and the river raft scene are fantastic. Not perfect, again, we'll get into it in this video, but fantastic. And in my review, I'd said I'd be happy for Gareth Edwards to get to direct another Jurassic film written by someone other than David Koepp. But then, this article popped up on my radar. Gareth Edwards thinks that the premise of the film, that people just don't give a shit about dinosaurs, is honest. He thinks that reflects the real-world sentiment people have. Dinosaurs are over. Welcome to their second extinction event. First wiped from the earth, then wiped from our minds. The movie states several times that people don't care about dinosaurs. There's a line of dialogue that a natural history museum in Manhattan only sold 10 tickets to the dinosaur exhibit in a week. 10 people in a whole week. And Gareth Edwards thinks that's realistic. I don't need to tell you that it isn't. You're here. The algorithm recommended you this video, my channel. You are one of the many people who does care about dinosaurs, and you understand that if they were brought back from extinction, we wouldn't grow bored of them. The same way we don't grow bored of zoos and aquariums and modern flora and fauna exhibits in natural history museums. It's a ridiculous take, but Gareth Edwards says it's honest. either because Universal is forcing him to say the company line, or they have successfully tricked him into believing it. Nobody cares about dinosaurs anymore isn't honest. It's the delusional thinking of Universal executives to protect their own ego. They think this is why the reception of Dominion was so poor. Not because of bad writing, lazy character work, and wasted potential. Sound familiar? No, people didn't like Dominion because people just don't care about dinosaurs anymore, the way they did in the 90s. Dominion didn't have a hybrid. That must have been the problem, according to Universal's logic. They made so many mistakes with Jurassic World Dominion, but instead of learning from those mistakes, they learned absolutely the wrong lesson. Nobody cares about dinosaurs anymore. So for the sequel, let's hire the guy who either also believes that or is willing to play along. And I think that was a bad idea. As much as I think Edwards did some things very right in a way that maybe no other director could have done better, overall I prefer to see someone at the helm of a Jurassic movie who unapologetically champions the fact that dinosaurs are awesome, and you don't need to substitute them with monsters in your third act.
They're dinosaurs, wow enough.
But it's too soon to be talking about the third act. Let's go back to the start and go through the film step by step to see where I think Jurassic World Rebirth stumbled and possibly led the whole franchise astray. As I said, my overall rating for Jurassic World Rebirth is 6 out of 10, but the writing specifically only 3 out of 10. And in this video, I'll go over why I'm deducting 7 points. The first deduction, the cold open. The movie starts with the D-Rex escape, and right away one of the biggest flaws of the film is exposed. They were so desperate to work hybrid monsters back into their script, but Koepp clearly had no idea how to make that work.
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
I will talk about my main problem with the D-Rex and the Mutodons later when we talk about the third act, because the third act really illustrates the mistake with the hybrids. But like I said, it's too early to sink our teeth into that quite yet. Later is also when I'll point out the super simple solution that could have fixed it all, and no, it's not just cutting out the hybrids. Anyway, that's all for later. The problems start with the cold open, which establishes the villain of the film. A Snickers wrapper being the thing that undoes the entire high security facility is so comical, it belongs in a parody of a Jurassic movie. In the original Jurassic Park, an elaborate subplot of corporate espionage and human greed brings down the park. In Jurassic World, a hyper-intelligent super predator takes down the park. In Rebirth, a single Snickers wrapper takes down the facility. It's jaw-dropping stupid. In my review, I likened it to a Final Destination type scenario, but really it's more of a parody of a Final Destination setup. A Snickers wrapper gets sucked into the vent of one door and causes a chain reaction that triggers a full security system reboot, meaning all security systems are automatically deactivated. Before you wax poetic about chaos theory and a butterfly flapping its wings in Beijing, blah blah blah, I get it, okay? We all see what they did here. But this chain of reaction was comical levels of incompetence. There is nothing clever here. This is just the weirdest, most blatant product placement in the franchise. And that's saying a lot, because we already had this.
Hey, you want to see something else cool? Yeah!
Ignoring the sheer stupidity of this Snickers catastrophe, the real problem is that there are 3 factors to the cold open, and none of them work. The D-Rex, the characters, and the facility. The D-Rex does nothing of interest in the cold open to show what a threat it is. If not for the Snickers wrapper and InGen's commitment to sucky security systems, the D-Rex wouldn't have escaped. Apparently it's not strong enough or smart enough to have escaped on its own power. Before the Snickers incident, the characters talk about the D-Rex in a mundane, all-in-a-day's work way, which is a realistic way for 2 colleagues to interact, but doesn't really build up suspense for the big monster. Think back to the cold open of the original Jurassic Park. We see about 24 men, most of which armed, surround this mysterious cage. Just the shrill cry from the animal inside is enough to make them cower backwards away from the cage. Then everything goes wrong. And it doesn't go wrong because someone was eating a Reese's peanut butter cup, but because the raptor used its intelligence and brute force to ram the door of the cage at just the right time to create an opening through which one man is pulled to his death, while Muldoon, a character to return later in the film, desperately clings to him in an attempt to save his life. Muldoon's own death later is a full circle moment. While it's not uncommon for the cold open to have characters that have no recurring role, like the case in Rebirth, it does help in my opinion. Now, we've just spent time with characters who don't matter, which again is a totally normal thing for a cold open, but then you gotta do the other things right, and it doesn't. The D-Rex doesn't do anything important, the characters aren't important, and the facility is only relevant to the plot in the sense that it is the B in the characters go from point A to point B. The facility and the hybrid research InGen did there has no bearing on the core of the film. A crew goes to a dino island to get dino DNA to cure heart disease. If they had set the facility, and by extension the movie, on Site C, one of the other 5 Deaths Islands, a reference in a single line of dialogue to Hurricane Clarissa that took out the facilities on Sorna could have explained why this new island was overrun by dinosaurs as well. They wouldn't have had to waste any time explaining how a Snickers wrapper brought down this whole facility and the island. It also would have made a whole lot more sense for InGen's other mysterious facilities to be closer to Sorna and Nublar than Ile Saint-Hubert, which is such a great distance away that it would have been a logistical nightmare. A few months ago, I covered an article where David Koepp bragged about his 9 commandments for Jurassic World Rebirth, one of them being no retcons. David is a liar. So even though in prehistory dinosaurs were adapted to all different sorts of environments, including even Arctic environments, and even though Jurassic World Dominion shows that not only are the modern day dinosaurs successfully adapted to survive in the modern climate, they are thriving, procreating at, let's be honest, an unrealistic pace, a concerning pace. They're all over the place. Yet 5 years later, they've pretty much all died off, except for those in the tropical band around the equator. And it's this retcon that I think isn't just a mistake for Jurassic World Rebirth, but a mistake for the franchise overall. Because where does this leave them? All that story potential completely snuffed out because David Koepp had no idea. But for Rebirth specifically, I think the logic just falls apart. The movie proposes that people don't care about dinosaurs anymore because dinosaurs are everywhere, they are mainstream. The population has been so overexposed to dinosaurs, they've grown bored with them. Again, in the span of 5 years, mind you, because during Dominion there was a thriving black market which wouldn't exist if people were bored with them, because no ring of underground criminals is gonna bother with a product that has no consumer base. Anyway, the movie claims dinosaurs are as common as raccoons and opossums, which is why people are bored with them. Alright, then why is the movie also claiming that people couldn't tell the difference between a raccoon and an opossum? Or in this case, the difference between a brachiosaurus and an apatosaurus? At the start of the film, a news broadcast says Bronto Billy, identified as a brachiosaurus specifically, escaped its Manhattan enclosure to go sightseeing one last time. Only the movie shows us an apatosaurus holding up traffic in Manhattan. This first struck me as a mistake by the movie makers. You know, I thought, this is what you get when the captain of your movie thinks not caring about dinosaurs is honest, which potentially says more about what he thinks of dinosaurs than what the rest of us think of them. But then again, the movie did have a paleontologist advising them, and certainly the difference between a brachiosaurus and a apatosaurus is easy enough for anyone working within this franchise to catch. If it was a last-minute CGI change, changing the voice line of the news broadcast would have been super easy. It's just too dumb of a mistake for me to believe it was a genuine mistake. So I'll play devil's advocate, and I'll say that this inconsistency is just to show how people in universe don't care about dinosaurs. It's the lore. But it's bullshit lore. We're really supposed to believe that in a universe where dinosaurs are common to the point of being a bore, a local news station doesn't know whether the sauropod that has been living in the middle of Manhattan for years is a brachiosaurus or an apatosaurus? It doesn't make any sense for them not to know. And it's not the only time the movie makes people completely incompetent at recognizing dinosaurs. When the Spinosaurus first approaches the family's sailboat, they have no idea what it could be. Even if not being able to identify the exact species, they should at least clock, hey, that's a dinosaur. That's a big dinosaur. That's probably dangerous. But they aren't even particularly alarmed. And the whole reason Dr. Henry Loomis tags along for the mission is because they need him to identify dinosaurs. You know, the animals the world population has seen so much of, they've grown bored with them. Loomis has to come along, even though Martin Krebs knows there are only 24 species of dinosaur on Île Saint-Hubert, and he could have printed out a pamphlet with which is which. Instead, they drag along a civilian, which they don't actually want to do because he is a liability, but they drag him along anyway for such valuable insights as, yes, Zora, Titanosaurus is a herbivore, but its natural predators aren't. Wow, I'm sure glad we brought this Altoid munching liability along. Actually, I am glad, because Henry is by far the best character in the film. I'm just saying, the writing does a poor job at justifying his participation in the mission. There is nothing he does that Zora or anybody else couldn't have done after a 5-minute presentation back at the museum. So Henry is the best character, in my opinion. He's effortlessly likable because he's played by Jonathan Bailey, but also he has a beautiful, heartfelt moment in the film, and perhaps most importantly, he isn't dragged down by a failed attempt at giving him a tragic backstory. The other characters in this film aren't great, to say the least, and they are the third point to get deducted. Zora and Duncan are paper-thin characters that they try to give the illusion of depth, like one of those Illusion 3D drawings, by shoehorning in a truly awful, like abysmal scene between them, where they go back and forth through some dialogue that reveals Zora lost a teammate on the previous mission, and she missed her mom's funeral, and Duncan's son died and he divorced from his wife because it was too hard. In essence, that's good. In execution, oh my god, that was bad. Another case of, wow, they really just hit print on that first draft, and then laminated that shit so it wouldn't get wet on set, huh? No revisions, no rewrites, no matter how desperately needed. Another first draft symptom is that they accidentally wrote 2 motivations for Zora to go on this mission, like 2 options, and then they pick one and forgot to edit out the other one? Zora's mom recently died of heart disease. The mission is to get dino DNA to cure heart disease. That would have been the perfect motivation for her to agree to go on this mission. But aside from 2 mentions in the earliest scenes, it's never brought up again. Instead, it's all about the money. Zora has 0 interest in Krebs' offer until he brings up how much money he will pay her. So much money that she can leave the mercenary life behind, never has to miss anybody's funeral because she's too busy with her super secret mercenary missions. The prospect of making enough bank to buy her way out of this life is what convinces her to go to the island. And then through 2 brief conversations with Henry, her entire stance on this changes. She decides not to take the money. After the guy paying her dies anyway. She's a true accessible healthcare hero, folks. What happened to her mom is never a consideration. Martin Krebs we knew would be the villain the moment it was revealed he was the head of a big pharmaceutical company. There is no redeeming quality to him at all. Which is depressingly realistic for the head of a pharmaceutical company. He's willing to risk a family dying at sea, he doesn't save a teenage girl from falling overboard into dino-infested waters, and he betrays everyone at gunpoint at the end. Then he dies, like all villains must. They could have at least done something interesting with this character. Kind of like a take on the trolley problem. The needs of the few versus the needs of the many. They could have made him actually care about saving millions of people from dying of heart disease. And that he's willing to sacrifice a few people that go on this mission to make that happen. Give him the dilemma of either saving the briefcase of DNA, saving millions of lives, or saving the crew, and then have him choose the briefcase. Not because he's evil and it'll make him richer than he already is, but because he just truly wants to cure heart disease. Make him the character with the mom who died of heart disease. When you introduce that moral dilemma, that also shifts to the audience. The audience is also going to be thinking, yeah, what's more important here? What's the right choice here? Saving millions of lives or saving the couple of people from the dinosaurs on this island? The current moral dilemma of the film is just, will Zora choose buckets of money so she can put her feet up, or will she choose to make a heart disease cure accessible to everyone? The audience knows the answer right away, and frankly, she should too. The other characters in the crew technically have names, but really they're just Spino Food 1, Spino Food 2, and Ket's Food. There's nothing to them, and you know exactly who is going to die. The movie takes no risks there. The family, consisting of dad Ruben, daughters Isabella and Teresa's boyfriend Xavier, are an inexplicably pointless addition to the cast. Isabella is actually my second favorite character in the film, for the very personal, biased reason that I, as an autistic person, found it very relatable that she goes non-verbal for a while after the initial trauma that landed them on the island. The dad treats it with total understanding, like this is just a thing she does sometimes, not speaking, and that's okay. That doesn't necessarily make the character autistic, obviously, I'm not saying that, but she could be. And if she is, that's much better representation of neurodivergence than Gray asking how many pounds Nublar weighs. Ruben, the dad, just made me think how lucky I am with my dad. Because there are several points in the film where all Ruben does is just stand there and shout his daughter's names, when my dad would be hauling ass and actually doing shit, or at least trying to help. Teresa's only personality trait is being temperamental, which I guess is fine, and then we have Xavier, who was really inconsistent. You thought I was gonna say annoying. He is infuriatingly annoying at points, but then he also does commendable, even heroic stuff. I didn't feel like there was a natural progression to the character, it was bumps and starts. He is less annoying by the end, but I don't think it's character development. I think he's just less annoying by the end because he has fewer lines at that point. His dialogue is mostly in the first half. But the big problem with the family is that they have no business being in this film. They're just one big hunk of plot armor walking around, surviving situation after situation because the script said so. When the Mosasaurus attacks their sailboat, nobody dies. The Spinosaurus, which were swimming towards them before the Mosa even showed up, just vanish. When the Mosa and the Spinos attack the crew's boat, the family survives again. When it looks like raptors are gonna kill Xavier, he is saved by the random appearance of the Mutodon. The plot armor for this family projects such a strong force field that during the river raft scene, the Rex can't even kill the raft. It bites down on the raft and doesn't even puncture it, it's fine. In the gas station scene, the four of them can vent like it's Among Us before the Mutodon can take 2 steps to round the corner. And Isabella is fully out in the open and exposed with the D-Rex, and it just doesn't kill her. What is the point of bloating your cast with 4 characters who can't die? The family is only there because Universal has it in their head that a Jurassic film must include children, no matter what lengths they must go to achieve this. In this case, Koepp basically shoehorned an entirely standalone plot into the film to work the family into it when they have nothing to do other than magically survive every situation they are put in. An extension of the badly written characters is the stupidity of the characters. The characters are not supposed to be incompetent, but the script dumbs down the characters in key moments to make certain scenes and certain deaths happen. I think the example of character stupidity with the most dire consequences is how after getting the Mosasaurus DNA, the whole crew just relaxes, puts their feet up, celebrates. They just played tag with this huge apex predator of the ocean, and then they just sit out on the open water like sitting ducks. Why don't they immediately head towards the island, head towards the shallows where the Mosasaurus can't reach them? Why does the Mosasaurus momentarily leave them alone anyway? The boat is no bigger than the sailboat, the Mosasaurus could sink them just as easily, but instead it hangs back. They could have used that time while the Mosasaurus was, I guess, scared off by the tiny pinprick of the DNA canister to steer the boat to the shallows, before the Spinosaurus could even arrive, and before the Mosa could pop back up with a vengeance. The fact that they didn't take that logical step to get to safety leads to the immediate death of 2 crew members, and it's what leaves them shipwrecked on the island. It doesn't make sense for them to sit back like they're on a pleasure yacht after just narrowly evading the Mosasaurus ramming their boat, knowing exactly just what the consequences of that could be. I think that's the most egregious example, but there are more examples, more than I can remember after only seeing the film twice. But for example, Nina only dies because she's trying to move a huge pack of supplies that is clearly too heavy for her to be able to move, especially on her own. But she's completely unbothered and takes her sweet time with it, because in this world where dinosaurs are so common they are boring, the crew doesn't know that Spinosaurus can go on land, so they think they're safe on the shore. Even as Henry is screaming at them to get off the beach, they just don't. Even after Nina dies, they stay on the beach long enough to change clothes. And the 5 Spinosaurus never come back for another serving. They never come back at all. The 4th fumble reminds me a lot of Dominion. The 4th point deduction is for how the plot just goes from one action set piece to the next, and a lot of dinosaurs are just used for a one and done scene. And that in and of itself isn't a big issue, but it is a problem, in my opinion, when those single scene species, like the T-Rex, the Spinosaurus, and the Quetzalcoatlus, are great, but leave you wanting more, and overall the film just underutilizes some of its best animals in favor of a third act with basically aliens. In the original Jurassic Park, the T-Rex initially had 2 scenes, the main road escape and then the Jeep chase. But while shooting, Steven Spielberg realized that the T-Rex needed more. The audience would want to see it again. So he delivered, and they reworked the ending to include the T-Rex. For Jurassic World Rebirth, it was the opposite, allegedly. The film gives us this great scene with the T-Rex, and then it disappears. Originally, the idea was floated that it would fight the D-Rex at the end, but they didn't go that route. Of course, the worst example of a dinosaur being underutilized in favor of the hybrids is the single Velociraptor appearance. The Velociraptors are never even in focus before they get killed by the Mutodon. We were so excited when, of all things, a balloon revealed the design of the raptors. It was an amazing design, and they wasted it. We know from a magazine article and behind-the-scenes footage that the raptors were supposed to return for that gas station scene, only to be chased off by the Mutodons again. But even that disappointing second appearance, they were denied. Obviously, Jurassic World Rebirth has some great dinosaur scenes, but just like Dominion, these scenes feel more like game levels with some character cutscenes in between than a flowing story. And I thought it was laughably convenient that, after getting the Mosasaurus DNA out at sea, they only need 2 more DNA samples from species on the island, and these 2 species are literally neighbors. Seriously, they get the Titanosaurus DNA, and Zora turns around, and there are the Quetzalcoatlus. It doesn't work for me how some of these scenes are strung together, and I'm gonna give you 2 examples where they used 2 different approaches, and how I think they were both wrong. The first example is how the movie goes from the Mosasaurus attack on the family sailboat to the Mosasaurus attack on the cruise boat. It breaks those two scenes up with some character moments, including the dreadful dialogue between Zora and Duncan. All the momentum of that suspenseful Mosasaurus attack on the sailboat grinds to a halt. The crew rescues the family, an argument erupts because the family doesn't want to get dragged along on the mission, and then the Mosasaurus arrives again. They get its DNA, the Mosasaurus disappears again, only to return once more, heralded by the sails of the Spinosaurus nearing the boat, just like how it happened the very first time. I think this would have worked better as one long action sequence. While the family is getting attacked by the Mosa, the crew is already underway to their location, because the Mosasaurus is tagged. So rather than the crew responding to a mayday after all is said and done, the crew is coming for the Mosasaurus and arrive just as the family has scrambled onto the overturned hull. So the crew accidentally comes across this attack scene and is there to save the family. While the Mosasaurus briefly disappears as it reassesses the situation with this new boat, this new rival it needs to deal with, the crew hoists the family on board of their own boat, and that's when the Mosasaurus pops up again, and the scene basically plays out as it did, with the crew following through on their mission. I think that makes the plot armor of the family less obvious, because as it is, they should not have survived that first attack scene. The Mosasaurus shouldn't have stopped its attack until it had sunk its rival, the sailboat, and the Spinosaurus should have come along to eat the whole family. By cutting out the pause, which lasts a whole night, by the way, there is a whole night worth of pause between the two boat attacks. If they had cut that out, the family is saved before they should have logically died. This would also avoid the repetitiveness of starting the scene twice in the same way. Characters see the sails of the Spinosaurus, wonder what it is, Mosasaurus pops up. On the flip side, the Titanosaurus and Quetzalcoatl scenes are currently back to back, when I think that would have been the perfect place to interrupt it with some breathing room, because at the moment, as I said, it's comical in how convenient it is that these two species, the only two species on the island the characters need to interact with, are next door neighbors. I think it would have been much better if they had to trek to another part of the island to find the Quetzalcoatl's nest, and in that time, they could have worked in some quiet character moments. As standalone clips, the way the movie was marketed, the scenes work really well, and I'm genuinely looking forward to when Rebirth hits streaming, and I can watch these scenes over and over at my own autistic discretion. I really think that's where Rebirth is gonna shine for me. My favorite scenes, which I will be putting on repeat, are the Mosasaurus scene, the T-Rex River Raft scene, the Titanosaur scene, and the Quetzalcoatl scene. I think those are so good, but not perfect. So now a segment in this video where I want to highlight my issues with each. Keep in mind that these are minor. It's just a shame that even in its best moments, Rebirth just fails to reach perfection. First of all, the Mosasaurus scenes, and for the sake of ease, I'm clumping both Mosasaurus appearances in one, even though, as I said, the movie actually splits them into two by crowbarring some character backstory in there. Like I acknowledged 65 million years ago at the start of this video, Gareth Edwards can direct the shit out of these scenes, and his style and sense of scale really shines in the Mosasaurus scenes. Mosasaurus is my favorite thing to come out of the world branch of the franchise, and it has a near perfect role in this film. But there's one big letdown, and that's the fact that this giant apex predator doesn't kill anyone or anything, and that undercuts its power and impact quite severely. It's responsible for flipping the sailboat and crashing the cruise boat, but it's the Spinosauruses who get the kill. And yeah, I know it's established in dialogue that the Mosasaurus is attacking the boats because it sees them as rivals, not food, and that's the explanation for why it didn't eat the family and instead left them alone after the sailboat was turned over. Only, when Zora is hanging off the bow of the boat, it very clearly does see her as food, specifically snapping at her, trying to eat her. I think the Mosasaurus should have killed someone. Or, alternatively, something. Instead of the poorly implemented mutualism of the Spinosauruses working together with the Mosasaurus, maybe the relationship should have been more like what vultures have with lions. The lion makes the kill, and the vultures pick up the scraps. The Mosasaurus sinks boats because it sees them as rivals, and the Spinosaurus come along and eat the crew who are left in the water. Rather than working together, the Spinosaurus are vultures following the Mosasaurus around, and I think it would have been cool if the vultures got a little too comfortable around the lion, and the Mosasaurus actually ends up killing one of the Spinos. Not in a big bombastic brawl, just a really easy kill. Show that the Mosasaurus is more deadly than just body slamming boats. The T-Rex scene suffers from the same fatal flaw. Or rather, not fatal flaw. Not only does the T-Rex fail to kill any of the 4 characters it encounters, it can't even puncture the raft. It full-on grabs the raft and lifts it up, but I guess the T-Rex has the soft mouth of a golden retriever? The T-Rex is so incredible in this film. I dare say it's the best the T-Rex has ever looked from a design standpoint. It's so bulky and beefy and imposing. It's an absolute beast and I love it so much. But like, not inappropriately. But when you pair that with characters who have impenetrable plot armor, you do end up with a big problem in your scene. It has no stakes, and your apex predator is a total failure. The marketing had already spoiled all 4 family members survived to the 3rd act, but even if it didn't, the shiny plot armor is so obvious, the family might as well have sparked J.J. Abrams' lens flares every time they were on screen. Even though the older daughter makes the idiotic call to noisily inflate a raft next to a sleeping Rex, which realistically should have 100% led to everyone's death, they all survive because the script said so. And it's a real shame. As I mentioned in my non-spoiler review, the family should have been cut out of the film, with some of their scenes reassigned to the crew. The crew then should have been a slightly larger team than it was, consist of more killable characters. Upon getting shipwrecked on the island, the crew should have been split up, with one half doing the DNA mission and the other half making their way to the worker village, taking over the river raft scene, and then there could have been some character deaths here, and it would have worked so much better. And the justification here might be, oh, but the river raft scene is based on the scene in the novel, and nobody died there either. Well, it worked better in the book. Probably because Michael Crichton definitely did put in the time and effort to go through revisions to perfect his work, when Koepp didn't. Probably because he didn't get the chance from Universal. Also, while everyone survives the raft scene in the book has some surprising deaths. Jurassic World Rebirth has some deaths, yeah, but none of them are surprising. So that's how the book still creates tension and stakes, and the film fails to replicate it because every character that dies might as well have been wearing a red shirt. Next amazing scene, the Titanosaurus scene. This is a truly beautiful scene, and I really like how the movie just full-on stops and takes its time to admire the majesty of dinosaurs. It's great. I kinda don't want to say anything negative about it, because I'm well aware of just how nitpicky it is. But again, the point here is to illustrate that even when Rebirth is at its peak, it's still not perfect. It comes very close to replicating the iconic scene from the first movie, but it doesn't understand 2 crucial factors, in my opinion. For one, Alan Grant seeing a living dinosaur for the first time, not even knowing what Hammond was about to show him, cannot be compared to a guy who has definitely seen dinosaurs before. The movie acknowledges this, just not in the wild. That's the experience he's having. He's seeing a dinosaur in the wild for the first time. Alan Grant is seeing a dinosaur for the first time ever. It's his way of finding out they were brought back from extinction. The two are not the same. Obviously, seeing a dinosaur in its natural habitat for someone who has devoted his whole life to studying dinosaurs would still have an impact. He should still 100% be emotional and excited. It's just not the same. The movies keep trying to replicate a scene that can't be replicated anymore within the current universe that they've established. But still, I will say I do want these movies to have scenes like this because they are beautiful. I do adore this scene. It's the other factor that becomes more of a problem for me, and it gave me a bit of an uncomfortable, awkward underbelly feeling that shouldn't have been there. When Grant sees the Brachiosaurus for the first time, nothing bad has happened to him and the rest yet. In the cold open, we as the viewer know that a raptor killed a worker, but Grant doesn't know that. All he knows is there is a beautiful Brachiosaurus in front of him. There have not been any tragedies yet, no horrors. He doesn't even know that Hammond has created more dangerous species. The scene is completely unburdened by trauma. Jurassic World Rebirth places its Titanosaurus scene about in the middle point of the film. Two characters have already suffered gruesome deaths, and a family, including one very young girl, is shipwrecked on this island, and Henry has no idea if this little girl has been brutally mauled to death yet or not. Now, obviously, he doesn't know the kid, just like he didn't really know Bobby and Nina, but they're still people he interacted with. I don't know, call me a softie, but if I've just seen two people get eaten by a Spinosaurus, listening to their harrowing screams for their lives as they are dragged to their deaths, like literally a couple of hours ago, and I know a defenseless family is stranded on this island somewhere with no realistic hope of surviving, I probably wouldn't shout with joy because it's my first time seeing a dinosaur outside of a zoo or my literal neighborhood. It just nagged at the back of my mind. How could a character truly get swept up in the happiness and beauty of this after everything that has happened literally that morning? Jurassic Park, as with everything, does it much better. It too has a beautiful scene with Grant and the kids watching the sauropods after the traumatic attack of the T-Rex, but there's an apprehension there and a muted quality to the joy. It's an appropriate moment of levity and relief for the characters, and Grant is actively using the moment to comfort the kids, distract them from this dire situation they're in. I don't know, again, it's definitely a nitpick, but Henry's unbridled shout of joy in the Titanosaurus scene only works when you see the scene as a standalone clip, the way the marketing showed most of the film ahead of release, and the way I expect I'll mostly be rewatching the film, as segmented clips. I feel that within the film, there's something off about how unbothered Henry is by everything that has happened that morning. And it's really just about the shout of joy that he lets out. I think him crying as he touches the Titanosaurus is very appropriate and also has sort of like a double meaning to it. Like he's experiencing this joyful moment and yeah, he's crying tears of joy, but you could also say that part of what fuels those tears is the realization of what it has already cost them to reach this point, to achieve this moment. People are already dead to have gotten them to this part, to this experience. The Quetzalcoatl scene, just like the Titanosaur scene, is great except for some nitpicks that take it down just a peg, just a teeny tiny peg. The death of Leclerc is brutal. It actually makes me a little uneasy just seeing him get swallowed whole. My problem with the scene is mostly that the mercenary crew doesn't come across as particularly strategic or intelligent. The crew rappels down to the nest just with the hope that the Quetzes won't return while they're there, which seems like pretty bad odds to bank on. They could have done something there to make them a little more intelligent, make them seem a little more experienced than just shouting out what the difficulty degree of the climb is. For example, they could have had someone create a distraction, or maybe they notice that the Ketzes are patrolling the surroundings, monitoring a perimeter around their nest, and it takes them 7.5 minutes to fly a complete loop. So they wait for them to start the loop, and then they start a timer. They have 7.5 minutes to get into the nest, get the DNA, and get back up before the Ketzes circle back to them. Something to show that the characters are capable of strategic problem solving. Instead, they just wing it, if you can excuse the pun. And then Leclerc is just hammering hooks into the rocky cliff face, which, okay, I know nothing about climbing, obviously. I do know that you would create security points like that in a normal situation, however, nothing about this situation is normal. And they came down without the need for those hooks, so surely they would have been able to get back up or all the way down without the need for noisy construction work at the home of the meat-eating fighter jets? Right? Then, as Leclerc gets attacked, it takes Duncan 3 business days to respond, to start pulling him up. He hears Leclerc scream to be pulled up, and instead of immediately, I don't know, pulling him up, he first goes to the edge to look over and be like, huh? What? Is there something dangerous happening? Wouldn't an effective team of mercenaries have agreed ahead of time, hey, when I start shouting, up, pull me up, right away, no need for questions. Also, it's pretty stupid that Henry survives the fall because some palm leaves stopped his momentum and he landed in the most convenient little pond. But it was extra stupid and infuriating on second viewing when I noticed Duncan say to Henry ahead of the rappel down, if you fall, you die. And then he does fall, but he doesn't die. So in-universe, a knowledgeable character assessed the situation and concluded, yeah, falling is a death sentence. Except it's not. It's just a shame that even the stuff Rebirth does so right is undermined by, again, first draft syndrome. Now it's finally time to dissect the third act, where the bad writing really fails the film, and it falls on its face right before the finish line. The plot of Jurassic World Rebirth is about collecting DNA from the 3 largest dinosaurs for medical research. But all the DNA collecting is completed before the third act starts. The story has run out of steam, and there's this whole third act that's almost as tacked on and out of place as the San Diego sequence from The Lost World. In fact, maybe even more so. The Lost World is about one team wanting to document the dinosaurs in their natural habitat, and one team trying to take the dinosaurs to the mainland. The message is that dinosaurs do not belong among people. It's a bad idea.
What? What's a bad idea?
Dinosaurs just need to be left alone on the island. At least the San Diego incident hammers home the point that, yeah, it's a bad idea to bring dinosaurs to the populated world. It's a disaster waiting to happen. So it's almost, not quite, but it's almost like Chekhov's gun. You know, they established something, they established a threat, and then, yeah, the San Diego incident follows through on that. It shows you just how bad it is. It shows you that the good characters were right, just in case there was any doubt. Rebirth's third act is about hybrids showing up as a last-minute foil for our characters escaping the island with the dino DNA. The hybrids have nothing to do with the story. They're just there because Universal says people don't care about dinosaurs, and Gareth said, "Good point. Hey, have you seen Star Wars Return of the Jedi by any chance?" Since the first trailer revealed the D-Rex, the online debate surrounding it, and later the Mutadons, has been heated, to say the least. And before the premiere of the film, the argument in favor of these monsters over real dinosaurs was, oh, it fits perfectly with the theme. Jurassic Park and Jurassic World have always been about the hubris of man, ignoring the dangers of genetic manipulation, man playing God and it backfiring. It was never about dinosaurs, so hybrids make perfect sense within the theme. I'm not even going to argue that. The only relevant thing here that I will say is that hybrids have nothing to do with Jurassic World Rebirth. No matter how much sense they make in other films of the franchise, they don't make sense here. And that's a problem, innit? Hybrids are leftovers from Jurassic World and Fallen Kingdom being reheated and served to us because Universal thinks their absence is Dominion's one failure. Because people don't care about dinosaurs anymore. Jurassic World Rebirth is an incredibly simple story about a team that goes to a dinosaur island to collect dinosaur DNA for a cure to heart disease. The theme is not, man playing God is bad. The whole point of the film is to get a medicine that would eradicate heart disease. Some pretty godlike work. And that's not portrayed as a bad thing, but a good thing. Obviously. Jurassic Park used its advanced science to create a theme park, a vapid, capitalist endeavor in spite of movie Hammond's best yet delusional intentions. The role science plays in Rebirth is that it is a tool that can save millions, maybe even billions of lives with the DNA of animals that wouldn't have existed if not for man playing God and bringing back dinosaurs decades prior. The movie starts with a cool scene with the D-Rex escaping and ends with a whole third act of the Mutodons and the D-Rex trying to kill the characters before they leave the island, but the story happens between the hybrid scenes. To bookend your film with a creature that has nothing to do with your story, again, reeks of the script being a first draft. The story does not justify the existence of the D-Rex and the Mutodons. It makes zero effort to fold them into the narrative. And the solution is so simple that I have to believe that Koepp would have thought of it if this script went through even the most basic edits. And the only defense of Koepp's writing that I've kept saying is that I think a big reason why it was so bad was because Universal rushed him, and there was no time for rewrites. As soon as the metaphorical ink was dry, the cameras had to roll. So what would have been that simple solution to tie the D-Rex into the plot? Well, just make it one of the creatures they need to get DNA from. It's so obvious. Martin Krebs knows exactly what kind of animals were left behind on the island. He knows the D-Rex and the Mutodons are there. Have him spring a surprise fourth challenge onto the crew's mission. When it is revealed on the beach that he's holding back information about the type of animals on the island, have him reveal that they don't just need the DNA of the Mosasaurus, Titanosaurus, and Quetzalcoatlus, they also need the DNA of this freak Distortus Rex that InGen cooked up. Because while InGen was trying to make the next big park attraction, they accidentally made a creature invulnerable to cancer and degenerative disease and PMS and head lice and hangnails. Whatever. It has magical DNA, even more so than the other three, so they need it for their cure. With a tiny rewrite, the D-Rex goes from being a mere foil in the third act to their ultimate target. Rather than randomly showing up at the end after being absent for the whole movie, the crew actively has to go find it and get close to it. Look, obviously, in my ideal world, the movie would have been rewritten to not have any hybrid mutant monsters at all, because as I said earlier, dinosaurs are awesome. But that's personal preference, I admit that. However, wanting the hybrids to be relevant to the story isn't. That's just a basic requirement of storytelling. So I'm not saying the inclusion of hybrids is the writing mistake. The failure lies in how the movie doesn't actually include them. And what adds insult to injury is that on a smaller scale, the monsters also aren't used properly. If you're going to replace dinosaurs with monsters inspired by aliens, at least do something interesting with them that you couldn't have done with real dinosaurs. They gave the Mutodons wings, but aside from flying away with a raptor in that one scene, they don't use their flight. They mostly confine their flying hybrid to the inside of a gas station and underground tunnels. What was the point of basically recreating the Jurassic Park kitchen scene but replacing the raptors with these winged monstrosities when the story doesn't need them and the scenes don't need them and they don't do anything interesting while flying? Literally everything the Mutodons do could be replaced with the Velociraptors, except for that one scene in which they could have substituted the Mutodon with the Quetzalcoatlus. Have the Kets come swooping down and pick up the raptor before it jumps Xavier. Because Edwards, you already have an awesome flying creature in your movie. You don't need to invent one and then not use it properly. Why didn't the Mutodons, the flying hybrids, attack the helicopter instead of the D-Rex? Don't get me wrong, the D-Rex grabbing the helicopter was an oh shit moment that I actually really loved, even though the logistics of it don't fully check out. But that would have been the perfect use of the Mutodons to justify them having wings. Only problem there, though, is that when you let the Mutodons take down the helicopter, then the D-Rex does nothing a real dinosaur can't do. As much as I'm not a fan of hybrids, this is no secret, Jurassic World at least has the Indominus Rex do one thing after another that a normal dinosaur couldn't have done. The movie justifies the Indominus Rex on the level of the overall story and on a scene-by-scene level. The D-Rex could have been swapped out with any big theropod, and the only thing Rebirth would have lost was that one cool moment with the helicopter. I think that's a problem. The D-Rex could have been a T-Rex, or for total fan service, the Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus. And the Mutodons could have been raptors, with the Quetzalcoatlus getting extra appearances sprinkled in, killing that one raptor and taking down the helicopter. But again, substituting the hybrids for real dinosaurs is a personal preference. The basic minimum they should have done was make the hybrids relevant to the mission by putting D-Rex DNA on the crew shopping list and actually doing something unique with these monsters they invented. But I'm not done ripping into the third act quite yet. The 7th point deduction is for how the movie just fizzles out. While I actually commend them for once, not doing the formulaic big dino brawl at the end of the film, in this instance, I think it worked out to the detriment of the film. The third act lacks a wow factor. I like the D-Rex grabbing the helicopter. I've said that several times at this point. I really do like it. And the Krebs kill was brutal. But it's not enough. And what I hate is that they tried to cheat it. They tried to cheat an impactful ending with a fake-out death. They want their cake and eat it too. They want the emotional weight of a main character death while being too chicken shit to commit to killing a main character. Duncan's fake-out death was an insult. It was so dragged out. And what made it worse was that I never believed they would kill him. So as the music swelled and the other characters look on teary-eyed as the movie makes a big show of Duncan's heroic sacrifice, I got that feeling that it was more of a parody than a genuine emotional scene. And I just sat there with my arms crossed waiting to see in what ridiculous way they'd pull off his survival, because of course they would chicken out. The studio wants the option to bring Mahershala Ali back for a sequel. And then the final kick in the nuts or punch in the boob is that the script doesn't even have the wit for a clever escape. At this point, the script is fully reliant on the viewer having long turned off their brain and just expects you to accept that even though Duncan was within arm's length of the D-Rex, he survives without no explanation. Maybe the Snickers wrapper had a redemption arc and came back in the end to save Duncan. Hey, if the movie can't be bothered and instead lets us fill in the gaps for them, then I say that's the lore. The Snickers wrapper saved Duncan off screen. Best character arc in the franchise. And the D-Rex, which is drawn to light like a moth to a flame, doesn't come back for round 2 when the surviving Duncan waves another flare around to be rescued and the boat shines a floodlight on him as they return for him. During that moment, my mom, who was sitting next to me, sat up in her seat and she tensed up and went, "Oh no!" She thought the D-Rex would be lured back by the lights and kill Duncan after all. But of course it didn't. The D-Rex needed to do more in the third act than kill the bad guy and roar at a couple of people. And unfortunately, if they are too cowardice to kill one of the good guys, then the solution would have been the typical big dino fight. Have it kill the Mutadons at least.
Well, what are you waiting for?
I don't know. Something amazing, I guess.
So, I just spent however long this goddamn video ends up being ranting about all the flaws in Jurassic World Rebirth. And honestly, there's even more little stuff that I didn't even get into. And I get riled up about some of these missteps, so you probably think, okay, she hates Rebirth. But I don't. I stand by my initial review. It's not a good film, but overall, I had a good time. It's impossible for me to stay mad about these issues when I think about how awesome the Mosasaurus is and how beefy and beautiful the T-Rex is. It's kind of like when your pet pees on the carpet. You hope they don't. It's not your favorite part of having a pet, but you can't stay mad at them. I've probably gotten a little too good at accepting that some awesome dinosaur scenes on a very poorly constructed scaffold of a story is about the best we can expect from this franchise. I wish it was better, and I hoped that this time it would be better and rise above and reach, not quite the levels of the original, but, get close. The tools were in the toolbox, so to speak, with David Koepp returning as the writer, and a really good director at the helm again. But it was just a dumb but fun flick, and that's enough to entertain me, and all its flaws, I can rant about those, but that anger just doesn't last. However, I do still really want for the franchise to make an effort to improve, and that's why I decided to do this video and not go easy on them. For Jurassic World Rebirth, I was a lot more positive in my videos, not because I think Dominion is better than Rebirth, I don't, but because I felt the same way about Dominion the way I feel about Rebirth, which is, oh, it's flawed, but I still had fun. And for Dominion, I made videos that reflected my overall positive, non-critical attitude towards it, but I definitely see my own flaws in how I approach that. So with Rebirth, I've been expressing my criticisms, and have even gotten myself a bit of a reputation for just always complaining, but I'm not gonna hold any punches. Not because I want to beat down this franchise, but because I want it to fight back and get better. Now, I don't think me making a ranty video has any impact other than being cathartic for myself and hopefully for some of you guys, but it's only one of two things I can do. The other one being to speak with my wallet. The next time I'll watch it will be when it hits streaming, and I'm really looking forward to experiencing the film on a platform where I can skip some scenes and rewatch others on repeat. I won't see it again in theaters. I've seen it in theaters twice now, and that's about as much money as I think it was worth to me. But let's be honest, Snickers and Doritos paid for that whole film. The box office doesn't matter. A profit was guaranteed. That being said, it's doing pretty well at the box office, and looking at this poll on my channel, most of my viewers give it 4 stars, so clearly it's doing okay. While there's no news on a sequel, no matter what some people on this website might say, a sequel seems pretty likely. So we'll be back in a couple of years and see if they actually learned from their mistakes. Subscribe to the channel if you are as curious as I am to see what they'll do and where they'll take the franchise. If you've made it this far, thank you. Really? You made it this far? Wow. Yeah, thanks. You probably have a lot of issues with Rebirth too, just like me. So maybe you also, just like me, really wanted a story about dinosaurs in our world instead of another island adventure. If that's the case, if that's the kind of story you do still want, check out my audiobook. I will link it here and in the description box. It references some of the best unused bits of the novels, including a big Dilophosaurus, and there's many gruesome character deaths. Nobody is safe. Thank you so much for watching, liking, subscribing, and until next time, let's hope they learn from their mistakes.